The wind outside howled like a restless animal, clawing at the windows of the rusty lantern, a dim, aged bar tucked into a forgotten street corner in South Chicago. The city had a way of burying old places like this, beneath neon lights and steel towers, but the bar remained, just like Jack. Jack was 25, sharp-witted, and had worked the night shift at the Lantern for 2 years. Most nights were quiet. A few regulars drank in silence. The jukebox grumbled out blues tracks from the 60s, and the walls creaked like they remembered every drunken confession ever uttered. It was just past 1:45 a.m. Jack began wiping down the counters, eyeing the clock. 15 minutes to closing. He'd already stacked the chairs and locked the register. The last patron, a grizzled man named Hank, nodded goodnight and stepped out into the storm. That's when the front door creaked open again. The man who stepped in wasn't someone Jack recognized. He was tall, lanky, with pale skin that looked gray under the flickering overhead light. His coat was soaked through, water dripping onto the floor. His eyes were deep set, too dark, hollow. "We're about to close, man," Jack said, glancing at the clock again. The stranger didn't respond. He walked slowly to the farthest stool and sat down, facing the bar with his hands folded neatly on the counter. "Whiskey," he said, voice barely above a whisper. Something about him sent a jolt of discomfort through Jack's spine, but he poured a glass anyway, sliding it across the bar. The man didn't drink it, just stared at it like it held a secret. "You okay?" Jack asked. No reply, just silence. Outside, lightning flashed. For a moment, Jack swore he saw the man's reflection in the bar mirror, but it was twisted, grinning. When he blinked, it was gone. "You from around here?" Jack tried again. The man tilted his head. "I used to be." Jack froze. The words felt wrong, like they didn't belong in that mouth. And then the lights flickered. The jukebox stuttered to life on its own, playing a tune no one had selected. A slow, eerie waltz. Jack hadn't even touched it. He turned toward the jukebox. "Okay, that's enough weird for one night." When he turned back, the stranger was gone. But the glass of whiskey sat untouched, and beside it, a single, wet footprint led toward the back room. Jack stared at the wet footprint as if it might vanish if he blinked. The glass of whiskey still sat on the counter, untouched, yet the man was nowhere in sight. No door had opened. No floorboard creaked under retreating steps. Just that single, heavy footprint leading toward the back. He hesitated. The bar was old, haunted by time if nothing else. But this felt different, malevolent. He grabbed the small flashlight from under the register and followed the trail. It led him past the swinging door into the back storage room, a space packed with crates of beer, dusty bottles, and old neon signs that hadn't worked in years. There, against the far wall, stood the cellar door, partially open. Jack had never liked the cellar. It was narrow, damp, and colder than it had any right to be. The bulbs down there flickered even on good days, and the air carried a stench of mold and something coppery, like blood and old pennies. The bar's owner had joked that the cellar ate time. Spend 5 minutes down there and it felt like an hour. Jack slowly opened the cellar door, the hinges whining like something in pain. He shone his flashlight down the stone steps, half expecting to see the man standing in the shadows. Nothing. "Hello," Jack called. Silence. He descended, each step echoing behind him like footsteps of someone following. When he reached the bottom, the flashlight flickered, once, twice, and went out. "Come on," he muttered, slapping it until the beam returned. That's when he noticed the footprint again, on the dusty floor. Just one pressed into a patch of dirt no one had touched in years. Jack moved closer. The air was ice cold now, each breath he took forming visible clouds. And then he heard it. Footsteps above him, walking slowly across the wooden floor of the bar. But he had locked the doors. No one could have come in. He turned to head back up, but the cellar stairs were gone. Where the staircase had been, Now there was only a brick wall. Jack's heart pounded in his ears. He backed away, stumbling into a pile of boxes. He turned to run, but found himself in a hallway that didn't exist before. Narrow, made of stone, leading into blackness. From within that darkness came a voice, whispered, ragged. "You poured it. Now drink." Jack ran. But no matter how far he went, the hallway never ended. Only the whispers followed. Jack sprinted down the endless stone corridor, his breath ragged, heart threatening to crack his ribs. The flashlight flickered again, struggling to stay alive as the air grew colder with every step. The whispers danced around him, close, then far, then close again, mocking, echoing his footsteps, echoing his name. Yes, his name. Jack. He skidded to a stop, pressing himself against the damp wall, trying to think. This wasn't real. It couldn't be real. Bars didn't suddenly grow underground tunnels. Staircases didn't vanish. And strangers didn't just dissolve into thin air. He swung the flashlight in a wide arc. The stone hallway had changed. The walls now pulsed slightly, as if breathing. Moisture dripped from the ceiling, and then, 10 feet ahead, something glimmered in the dirt. A bottle. Old, covered in grime, yet standing upright like someone had just placed it there. No label, no markings, just thick, dark glass. Jack felt compelled to approach, though every instinct screamed at him not to. He crouched and picked it up. The bottle was strangely warm in his hand, and when he tilted it, the liquid inside didn't move. It was as if the contents were solid, or alive. Then came the voice again, clearer now, right behind him. "Drink." He spun around. No one there, but a figure lingered in the edge of his vision, always just beyond the flashlight's reach. Watching. Waiting. "No," Jack muttered, tossing the bottle to the ground. But it didn't shatter. It simply vanished, as if the earth swallowed it whole. The whispers stopped. The corridor ahead twisted suddenly to the left. Jack, driven by sheer desperation, bolted around the corner and stumbled into the familiar basement of the Rusty Lantern. He gasped in relief, eyes adjusting to the flickering bulbs overhead. The stairs were back. Everything looked normal, except for the bar stool. The same stool the stranger had sat in earlier was now occupied again. Jack froze. From the cellar, he could see the figure's back, still, hunched, unmoving. He climbed the stairs slowly, flashlight raised like a weapon. As he stepped behind the bar, the man turned to face him. But it wasn't the same man. This one wore Jack's face. Only the eyes were wrong, too black, too empty. Jack stumbled back, knocking over the whiskey glass. It shattered. And in that moment, the jukebox came to life again, blaring the same waltz. The figure stood. "Last call," it said, and smiled. Jack's body froze as his doppelganger stepped forward. The dim lights of the Rusty Lantern buzzed and flickered, casting jittery shadows that danced along the walls. Jack's breathing came in shallow gasps. His mind screamed to run, but his legs remained heavy, rooted to the sticky floor behind the bar. "Who the hell are you?" Jack whispered. The thing wearing his face didn't answer. It just tilted its head and smiled wider, as if the question itself was a joke. Then, slowly, deliberately, it walked past Jack and stood in front of the mirror behind the bar. And for the first time, Jack noticed something terrifying. The mirror didn't reflect it. Where the figure should have been, there was nothing. Just Jack, alone. Jack's reflection moved as it should, wide-eyed, trembling. But beside it, where the mimic stood in the real world, there was only empty space. It was like reality refused to acknowledge its presence. Or maybe the mirror was the only thing that saw the truth. The jukebox stopped abruptly, the music slicing off mid-note. Silence. Then the lights above Jack shattered with a sharp pop, one after another, as if following the path the figure had walked. Jack dove behind the bar, heart hammering. He reached under the counter for the old Louisville Slugger the owner kept there, gripping it with white knuckles. I don't know what the hell you are, Jack muttered through clenched teeth, but I'm not dying in this damn bar. He jumped up and swung hard, but the bat went through the thing's head as if it were smoke. No resistance, no contact. It simply passed through. The entity slowly turned back toward him, unblinking, unafraid, and then it opened its mouth, wider than any human should, revealing rows of jagged, ink-black teeth. It whispered, "You poured the drink. Now the bar is yours." Suddenly, Jack's surroundings shifted. The front windows bricked over. The exit signs went black. Even the clock stopped ticking. Jack spun in place, disoriented, and saw his own reflection now standing outside the mirror, trapped, slamming its fists, screaming in silence. He looked down. He was behind the bar again. Only now he wore the soaked coat, his skin gray and cold, his eyes hollow. And outside, on the other side of the bar, someone new was entering. Another patron. Unaware. The whisper returned, this time from inside him. "Last call never ends." The door creaked open. A gust of icy wind rolled in as the bell above the frame jingled with a broken chime. Jack, no, whatever he had become, stood silently behind the bar. He didn't remember walking there. He didn't remember choosing anything. But he was there, rooted, breathing, yet not. The man who entered looked to be in his 40s. He was bundled in a thick coat, his face worn and tired. Probably a local, maybe lost, maybe just drunk enough to stumble into the only bar with a light still on in this forgotten stretch of the city. Jack wanted to scream, to warn him, but nothing came from his lips. His mouth moved, but the words died before they could form. He was a prisoner inside himself. The patron approached the bar slowly, eyeing the empty room. "You open?" he asked. Jack, his new self, nodded. He felt his own hand reach for a glass. "What'll it be?" he heard himself say. His voice was colder now, deeper. "Wrong." "Just a beer, I guess," the man replied. Jack watched in horror as the bottle slid across the bar like it had a mind of its own. The man caught it, cracked it open, and took a long drink. "Place is creepy," he muttered, "but I've been in worse." Jack's hands moved on their own, methodical and precise, cleaning a spotless glass, pretending normalcy. He was acting the part, the role he now held. Then from the corner of the bar, something shifted. A chair, unmoved for years, dragged itself slightly. The man looked over, puzzled. "You got rats or something?" Jack tried again to speak, to say, "Leave," but the words never came. Instead, his head tilted with a smile. "Just the regulars." The man chuckled nervously, taking another sip. "You always open this late?" Jack's lips moved again. "Only when someone's supposed to be here." The man's eyes narrowed slightly. "Supposed to?" Before Jack could respond, the jukebox flared to life, blaring that same haunting waltz. The lights dimmed. The mirror behind the bar clouded, and the man slowly turned toward it. There, in the reflection, he wasn't alone. A figure stood behind him, a shadow, tall, watching. But when he spun around, the space was empty. He looked back at Jack, suddenly pale. I think I should go." But Jack's body moved fast, too fast. His hands slammed down into the bar with a force that rattled the glasses. "You haven't finished your drink." The man backed away, eyes wide, knocking over the stool as he stumbled. "No, and the front door." It was brick shut again. Jack could feel it. The bar wanted him here, forever. And someone had to take his place. The man's breath hitched as he backed against the cold wall, staring wide-eyed at the blocked exit. "What the hell is this?" he rasped. "What kind of place is this?" Jack, trapped behind his own eyes, watched in agony. His body moved with calm certainty, wiping down the bar like none of it was unusual. A smile curled on his lips, but it didn't feel like his. He wanted to scream at the man, "Don't drink it! Don't agree! Run!" But the bar had stolen his voice long ago. The patron ran to the windows, bricked, every one of them, solid stone where glass had once been. He turned and hurled the beer bottle, screaming, "Let me out!" The bottle shattered against the mirror behind Jack, sending spiderweb cracks through the glass. The jukebox skipped. Jack flinched. Something shifted inside him. That crack, it wasn't supposed to happen. The man collapsed onto a stool, panting. "I don't know what this is, but I didn't ask for this," he muttered, hands trembling. Jack's voice emerged again, but it was not his to control. "You were called." "No, I wasn't. I was just—" "You were tired, angry, lost," the voice said. "You came here to forget. That's the invitation." The man looked up. "Forget what?" The jukebox hummed softly behind him. Then from somewhere beneath the floor came a dull knocking sound. Once, twice, then silence. Jack's body leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "You still have a choice. Drink and forget, or run and remember." "What happens if I drink it?" the man asked slowly. "You become part of the bar." "Like me," Jack wanted to say, but his voice gave the rehearsed answer. "You let go. All your burdens, all your sins, they stay here. You walk out clean." The man stared at the unfinished bottle of beer on the counter. He reached toward it, hesitated. His fingers trembled inches away from the neck. Jack watched, a silent war raging inside him. Every soul trapped in this place had made that choice, and once it was made, it was permanent. The man pulled his hand back. "No," he whispered. "I'll take my burdens." The bar seemed to groan. The jukebox screeched. The lights above burst, plunging the room into near darkness. And then, slowly, the bricks crumbled from the front door. One by one, falling away like sand. Jack stared in awe. He'd never seen anyone refuse an escape. Was that even possible? The man looked back one last time, his face pale. "Whatever this place is, it's hungry." And then he left. The door shut softly behind him. Jack's body slumped, exhausted, but deep inside, for the first time, a flicker of hope sparked. If one had escaped, maybe he could too. The bar was silent again. Too silent. After the man escaped, the rusty lantern seemed unsettled. The jukebox remained dark. The walls no longer pulsed with that unnatural hum. The mirror, still cracked from the thrown bottle, dripped something that wasn't glass. Thicker, darker. Jack stood behind the bar, still locked inside his body. But something had shifted. That flicker of hope from before, it hadn't died. If anything, it grew. The rules had been broken. For the first time in what felt like centuries, he could think clearly. The fog that clung to his mind, whispering obedience and silence, was thinning. He reached up slowly, on his own, and touched the crack in the mirror. It pulsed beneath his fingertip. A memory surfaced, so sharp it made him stumble. Not of the bar, of before, of a girl. Her name was Emily, his sister. They had a fight, harsh words. She begged him not to leave that night, not to work the late shift. But he'd gone anyway, needed the tips. The guilt had buried itself deep until the bar offered to take it away. Jack gasped, stepping back. The bar fed on regret, and now it was starving. He turned slowly, scanning the empty room. Something was coming. The bar wasn't just a trap, it was a being, a predator. It needed someone behind the counter, yes, but it also needed souls to devour. And when that man chose to leave, it went hungry. The door creaked. Jack tensed, but no one entered. Instead, the lights buzzed back to life, flickering wildly as every stool in the bar began to turn on its own, slowly facing the center. Then came the voices. Soft at first, like echoes from far away, a woman sobbing, a man muttering prayers, a child's laughter, twisted and hollow. Jack backed away, heart pounding. The spirits, the others. They were waking up. Figures began to materialize, half-seen shapes sitting in the bar stools, shadows stretching long and unnatural, faces blurred as if made of smoke, all of them watching him. One step forward. A woman in a blood-stained dress. Her eyes glowed faintly. Her voice cracked like dry leaves. "You're not supposed to remember." Jack clenched his fists. "I want out." She tilted her head. "Then serve well. Break the cycle." The jukebox screamed suddenly, louder than ever, and the bar shook. Behind Jack, the cracked mirror split wide open, revealing not his reflection, but a hallway. Long, dark, endless. A choice. Stay and obey, or walk into the unknown. Jack took one last look at the bar, then stepped through the mirror. Jack stepped through the cracked mirror and into darkness. The air changed instantly, thick and cold, like walking into the lungs of something ancient. The floor beneath his feet was slick stone, and the walls pulsed faintly with a sickly green glow, as if veins of mold ran through them, alive and breathing. Behind him, the bar was gone. Only the hallway remained. And it whispered. Faint voices echoed from the walls, calling his name in hushed, pleading tones. "Jack, come back. Stay behind the bar. You're safer there." He pressed on. The hallway twisted unnaturally, bending in ways that defied logic. Left turned into down, forward into backward. At one point, he was sure he walked in a circle, only to find the floor now covered in dozens of broken beer bottles, each with names etched into the glass. Names he recognized. Old patrons, the lost, the trapped. One bottle shimmered brighter than the rest. He knelt, brushing glass aside, and read the name. Emily. His chest clenched. "What is this place?" he whispered. A voice behind him answered. "Debt." Jack turned sharply. A figure stood there, cloaked in darkness, face hidden beneath a wide-brimmed hat. The same voice that had whispered from behind the bar, "Too calm, too cold." "The lantern grants relief," it said. "Freedom from pain, from guilt. But there's always a price." Jack stepped back. "Why her name? What does Emily have to do with this?" The figure raised a hand, pointing toward the hallway ahead. "She came looking for you." Jack's blood ran cold. "No!" "She found the bar 2 nights after you vanished, drank from the bottle with your name on it. The bar showed her what you gave up, and in exchange, it took her." Jack stumbled, nearly falling. He gripped the wall, breath shallow. "I didn't know." The figure tilted its head. "No one ever does." Jack turned and ran, faster than his legs could carry him, ignoring the laughter echoing down the corridor. The hallway narrowed, the walls breathing faster now, as if excited. And then a door, tall, carved with strange runes. Blood oozed from the hinges. He pushed it open. Beyond was a room that looked eerily like the rusty lantern, but upside down. The ceiling held furniture nailed in place. The floor was a mirror. Behind the bar stood Emily, pale, empty-eyed. She looked at him. "Jack," she whispered, "you shouldn't be here. I'm here to take you home." A low growl shook the room. From the shadows, something stirred. The bar was awake, and it was angry. Emily's eyes flickered, not with life, but recognition. "Jack, what did you do?" Her voice cracked like broken glass. "I didn't know what it took from me," Jack said, stepping closer. "I didn't know it took you." The mirror floor beneath him rippled with each step, distorting his reflection until it no longer looked human. His image had hollow eyes, black veins, and a grin that stretched too far. Emily stayed behind the bar, her fingers clinging to the wood. "It keeps me here, like it kept you." Jack shook his head. "We can fight it. Together." The bar groaned. Lights exploded above them, showering sparks in reverse, falling up to the ceiling. The furniture nailed there began to tremble, loosening as if gravity was preparing to reverse. Suddenly, the floor beneath Jack fractured, sending out spiderweb cracks of silver light. From beneath the mirror glass, hands began reaching up, dozens, maybe hundreds, clawing, grasping. Each one wore a bartender's sleeve. The past. All those who served. "Jack, run!" Emily shouted, but her voice wasn't alone. It echoed in many tones at once, layered like a choir of ghosts. The thing in the dark finally stepped forward. It wasn't a man. It wasn't even human. It wore the shape of a bartender. Yes, but only his costume. Beneath the well-pressed vest and friendly smile was a rotting, shifting mass of shadows, bones, and forgotten names. Its eyes were coins, its mouth lined with bottle caps. "I gave you peace," it whispered. "You broke the rule." Jack stood between it and Emily. "You lied." "I offered silence. You chose memory." It raised one long, blackened hand, and the floor shattered. Jack fell, down into the belly of the bar. He crashed onto a wooden platform, surrounded by walls of liquor bottles that stretched infinitely high. Each bottle held a moment. Whispers echoed from within them. Sins. Every sin ever drowned in drink. One floated toward him. He caught it. Inside a vision. Emily crying at his empty apartment, her hand holding his photo, her whispered promise. "I'll find you." Jack's eyes filled with tears. He smashed the bottle. The walls screamed. The shadows recoiled. He understood now. This place didn't trap souls. It fed on regret. If he let go, if he truly forgave himself, he could burn the whole thing down. Emily appeared beside him, flickering. "How?" she asked. Jack reached into his pocket. Inside, somehow, was the same receipt he signed the night he first entered the bar, the night he gave himself away. He turned it over. Wrote 2 words, "I forgive." The walls exploded in light. Bottles shattered. The bartender thing roared in agony above, and the floor gave way again. Jack and Emily tumbled upward, dragged not by gravity, but by freedom. Jack and Emily surged upward, weightless, carried by a force that felt like wind and memory woven together. Shards of glass spun around them, each piece reflecting moments of pain, laughter, loss. It was as if the bar itself was unraveling, memory by memory, regret by regret. They burst through the mirror in a storm of light and landed back in the original rusty lantern. Only it wasn't the same. The walls were decaying. The floorboards curled and splintered as if rejecting the very foundation. Liquor bottles on the shelves shattered one by one, leaking black smoke that rose like ghosts. The jukebox played a broken, warped version of an old swing song, its melody bending into a wail. The entity behind the bar, the bartender-shaped thing, emerged from the shadows again, now twisted, unstable. Its face flickered between all the previous bartenders it had ever consumed. "You think forgiveness changes anything?" It snarled. "You still belong to me." Jack stood tall, holding Emily's hand. "Not anymore." The thing lunged forward, the bar cracking beneath its weight. But Jack didn't flinch. Instead, he reached across the bar and grabbed the final bottle sitting there, one with his name etched in gold. He turned it in his hand. Inside was the night he signed away his guilt, the moment he said yes to forgetting. He smashed it. The effect was immediate. The entity howled, disintegrating from the inside out. Its bartender disguise melted away like candle wax, revealing a writhing knot of shadow and voice and hunger. Then, silence. The lights dimmed. The walls stopped shaking. The bar began to fade. Dust first, then brick, then memory. Jack looked at Emily, eyes wet. "We're free." She nodded slowly, uncertain. "But where do we go?" As if in answer, the front door creaked open. For the first time in years, real daylight poured in. Not the flickering streetlight glow of the cursed bar's illusion, but true sunlight, warm, golden, alive. Jack stepped toward it, hand still gripping Emily's. The remaining bottles dissolved into smoke. The jukebox let out a final sigh and died. With a deep breath, Jack crossed the threshold. Behind them, the rusty lantern crumbled into ash and vanished. The sunlight was almost blinding after the endless darkness of the bar. Jack shielded his eyes, squinting as he stepped out onto the empty street. His feet hit the pavement, solid and familiar. The city of Chicago stretched out before him, a place he had known, but now felt like a stranger. Emily stood beside him, her expression a mix of awe and confusion. "Is it really over?" Jack turned toward her. "I don't know, but we're free." They stood in silence for a moment, the echoes of the bar still lingering in their minds. The street was eerily quiet, as if holding its breath for something to happen. A cold wind whispered between the buildings, carrying the scent of damp earth and a distant promise. It was then that Jack realized something he had long since lost, his reflection. He hadn't seen it for years. The rusty lantern had taken it, trapping him behind the counter in a body that wasn't truly his. But now, in the bright light of day, he could see his own face again. No longer distorted, no longer hollow. "Do you think," Emily began, her voice trembling slightly, "do you think it's possible to start over? To go back?" Jack looked at her, his heart heavy with the weight of the past that had nearly consumed them both. "We don't have to go back," he said softly. "We're already moving forward." They began walking, their footsteps echoing in the empty street. It felt like a new beginning, but Jack couldn't shake the feeling that something else was waiting. There was a thin line between freedom and the unknown, and even though they had escaped the clutches of the rusty lantern, the world outside felt like a vast, untamed wilderness. As they walked, Jack glanced back, half expecting to see the bar, the rusty lantern looming in the distance. But there was nothing. Not even a memory of it remained. It had been erased, wiped from existence. But deep inside, Jack knew that some part of it would always haunt him. The bar had fed on regret, on broken promises, on forgotten lives, and it had left its mark on him. For a long time he had served it, never knowing he was the one who needed saving. The thought lingered, like a ghost of its own. But there was something else, too. A small spark, something that felt real. Emily's hand in his, the sunlight warming his skin, the city in front of him stretching endlessly. They had left behind the shadows. They had walked out the darkness. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. Days passed, and the world outside the rusty lantern began to feel more real, more alive. Jack and Emily started rebuilding their lives, piece by piece, as though emerging from a fog that had clouded their vision for years. They found small joys in the mundane, simple conversations over coffee, walks through the city, and moments where the silence wasn't oppressive but comforting. But even as they embraced this new life, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. Not by the shadow of the rusty lantern, but by something deeper, something within himself. A persistent whisper in the back of his mind. "I didn't escape." The thought came and went, often when he was alone or in the stillness of the night. But Jack couldn't ignore it. The bar, its memories, and the dark things it had shown him, it was all still there, locked in the corners of his mind, like a secret he wasn't ready to face. One evening, as they sat on the porch of their modest apartment, Emily turned to him with a soft smile. "How do you feel?" Jack looked at her, his gaze distant. "Free," he replied. The word felt strange on his tongue, but it was the truth. They were free, weren't they? But Emily didn't seem convinced. Her eyes searched his face, as though she were looking for something buried deep within him. "I know it's been hard," she said softly, "but you're not alone anymore. We're both here." Jack nodded, his heart swelling with gratitude. "I know, but there's a part of me that still feels connected to it, like I'm always going to be tied to that place." She reached out and took his hand, squeezing it gently. You're not that person anymore, Jack. You've left it behind. We've both left it behind. Jack's eyes met hers, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, he believed her. But just as they stood, preparing to go inside, a familiar sound reached Jack's ears, the faint, distorted hum of a jukebox. Jack froze, his heart skipped a beat. Emily turned to him, confusion crossing her face. "What's wrong?" The sound grew louder. "No," Jack whispered, his voice trembling. "It can't be." Without thinking, he rushed toward the alley beside their building, following the sound. Emily followed him, calling his name, but Jack didn't stop. He couldn't stop. He rounded the corner and found it, the rusty lantern. It sat there just as it had before, bathed in the neon glow of its sign. But it was different now. The door was slightly ajar, and the sound of the jukebox was undeniable, though no one else was in sight. He stepped forward, his breath ragged. The door creaked open, as if inviting him in. But this time, Jack didn't feel the pull of the bar. He didn't feel the need to enter. He stared at the doorway, then at Emily, who had caught up to him. "It's over," Jack said quietly. "It has to be." Emily looked at the bar, then back at him, her face set with resolve. "We don't need it anymore, and we don't owe it anything." For the first time, Jack turned away from the bar, feeling the weight of it lifting off his shoulders. He knew now that the rusty lantern didn't control him. He had the choice, the power to walk away. And so they did. The bar's lights flickered one last time, as if acknowledging their decision, before it faded into nothingness. Jack and Emily walked back into the quiet night, hand in hand, knowing that they had truly left it all behind.